just won all that, and it's like, that was the worst thing that could have happened. It took me to a very dark place. I was addicted very, very quickly and lost a huge amount of money, but never enough, because you're always chasing the high of your biggest win, right? So, and if you lose, you'll chase it, so you've lost everything. 80 fixed odds betting terminals on the high street. Of all the people that accessed or used fixed odds betting terminals, 50% were either addicted or at risk. The gambling industry makes a huge amount of money from addicted gamblers. This is like the commercial model. It's the product changes your gambling style, and it totally skews your perception of what.
Hey everyone, today we have a very important guest on the podcast. He's the director of the very popular worldwide gambling blocking software Gamban, and he also played a massive part in the law that reduced fixed odds betting terminals from £100 a spin to a maximum of just £2 a spin. Matt Zarb-Cousin, welcome to Addicted Recovery.
Thanks for having me.
So I knew of Matt in February 2025. We both appeared on a documentary about gambling addiction called Place Your Regrets, directed and created by our mutual friend Rory Campbell. So this is the first time we've actually sat down and had a chat, myself and Matt. So to get started, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I do a lot of campaigning around social issues, and obviously I spend most of my time running Gamban with my business partner, Jack Simmons. I was addicted to gambling when I was 16 for about 4 years, and it was the fixed odds betting terminals in the betting shops, which were like slot machines, but you could bet up to £100 a spin on roulette. It took me to a very dark place. I was addicted very, very quickly and lost a huge amount of money, but also lots of time, and I feel like it really stunted my development. I was in a very kind of crucial stage, I would say, in my sort of growing up and becoming an adult, and I feel like it interrupted that in a way. Towards the end, suicide ideation, and in recovery, I just wanted to try to help as many people as possible. My way of doing that was to get involved in politics, which is where why I ended up working for Jeremy when he was leader of the Labour Party, but also campaigning for a reduction in the stake on fixed odds betting terminals, as you mentioned, either side of that. And we were successful in what we campaigned for, which was a limit of £2 a spin. And that has had a significant impact on reducing the harm associated with that product.
Tell us more about those 4 years where you were gambling. First of all, you said you started when you were 16, and it was fixed odds betting terminals, which are all located inside of bookmakers. How were you able to do that at 16, first of all? Just no checks type of thing?
Yeah, I mean, it was 2006, so there was no real checks. There was no rigorous ID verification or anything like that. So it was a betting shop that was on my road when I was growing up, and I would walk past it a lot. You know, if I was walking to the train station or to the bus stop or whatever, I'd always walk past the shop. And it was only when I was 16 that I went in for the first time to put a bet on a football match. When I was waiting for my friend, went on the machine and put a couple of pounds in, and I think I won like £10 on the first go. And then I went back the next day and I won again, similar amount of money, maybe a bit more. And then I kept winning every time I went. And one session I ended up winning like £700, and I only put like 10 or 20 quid in. And I was addicted, obviously, from then on, because whenever you then start losing, you believe, obviously wrongly, that you can chase it and win it back. And when you start winning £700, or if you start winning hundreds of pounds, it's never enough, because you're always chasing the high of your biggest win, right? So this is the cycle that I was in, and I would occasionally have winning sessions, but obviously you always go back to it, and that's the nature of the addiction. Is you win, you want to gamble more, it's never enough, and if you lose, you'll chase it till you've lost everything. So inevitably you end up in a place where given the mathematical house advantage of roulette, you end up in a place where you will lose all the money you have and have access to if you continue engaging with the product. And the difference between casino roulette, which has always, been recognized as a much more addictive form of gambling than, uh, compared to other forms of gambling, as a lottery, for example, like casino table games have always been considered to be harmful. That's usually played at one spin a minute, or, usually 1 to 3 minutes per spin, but at the fastest, about one spin a minute. On the fixed odds betting terminals, it was one spin every 20 seconds and it had a repeat bet button. And you could just keep going and going and going and not even think. There's no even time to think between spins. If you lost it, you wanted to chase it, and that was it. It was an addictive product. Obviously, it had addictive content. It was accessible. I believe that it was optimized for engagement in the way that it was designed. What we can control is products that we make available to the public and the places within which they are made available and how accessible they are and how safe they are, given where they're made available. For me, fixed odds betting terminals were massively incongruous with this idea that we put the most harmful products in the least accessible venues. So casino table games, will keep them in casinos and will restrict or limit the number of casinos. What fixed odds betting terminals did was they subverted that by just putting casino games on machines, speeding them up, and making those machines as accessible as possible on every high street. Sometimes, in Newham in East London, the high street there had 40 fixed odds betting terminals, had 20 shops. So these machines were everywhere, and they would have 4 per shop as a limit, but they would open more shops to facilitate more machines. So it's a very, very addictive product, and they were making huge amounts of money from it. And it was the most harmful product if you looked at the rates of addiction associated with it. So you had, like, of all the people that accessed or used fixed odds betting terminals, 50% were either addicted or at risk. So showed signs of addiction.
Wow.
Is extremely high. And as I say, it's not rocket science to put a product that's addictive on a machine, make it faster, and make it accessible. That is a recipe for addiction, and this is the problem. The gambling industry makes a huge amount of money from addicted gamblers. This is like the commercial model. So it's very sad, but that's the reality. And so if they're making a lot of money from a product, it's probably because a lot of people are getting addicted to it.
Two massive things I just related to on what you said there was the first of all, you said the betting odds terminals repeat bet every 20 seconds, whereas in the casino it was a bit slower. In the height of my addiction, I was able to find a way around that. Whilst I just, as you were talking about it, then I just pictured myself right back there. In one particular casino in Liverpool, there's 4 roulette tables in a square. I'd literally stand right in the middle of that square and I'd be betting all 4 tables at once. And that was a way of me speeding up my bets as quick as possible. And then just the nature of the betting terminals. I remember going into a bookmaker's once to place a bet on a horse. I've purposely gone in there just to place that bet, nothing else. I just want to put that bet on, watch it. Because I also suffered from the illness of thinking I know better than everybody else, I'll wait till it wins because I know it's going to win, and then I'll collect my money. In between placing that bet and the race actually going off, I'd lost more than I was going to win off that horse anyway on the fixed odds betting terminal, on the roulette wheel, just while waiting for that horse. And just, I was literally back in the bookmakers and I was back in the casino as you were speaking then with those two particular memories. I'm sure everyone who's ever experienced the fixed odds betting terminals is nodding along to everything you're saying there.
It totally.
Your win that you spoke of, sorry, go on, Matt.
I was just saying, it's the product changes your gambling style, and it totally skews your perception of what is a rational wager. Let's put it that way. One similar story that I have. It was the season that West Ham stayed up when they were expected to go down, and in the run-in, they had to, like, win against Arsenal. They won against Arsenal away. They had to beat Man United away on the last day, and I had, like, Tevez 1-0, who was playing for West Ham at the time, written out on the betting slip, and it was 40-1, and I was going to put 20 quid on it, And then I just thought, no, that's too much money. And then I put it back in the machine and I lost it. And then it was Tevez 1-0. And I always remember that because I think like that's a prime example of like how, why did I think I put the 20 in, obviously not expecting to lose it all. That's the cognitive dissonance, right? It's like, I'm going to go, I'm going to put this money in the machine, but I'm only going to play one spin or X amount. And then once you're in it, once you're in the session, your entire cognitive function is distorted. So you're then like, it's like basically like once you've had a pint of beer, right? You think differently. So then once I've started gambling, I'm thinking differently. And then I just lost it all. And I lost the 20 and then everything else I probably had won that day and more. It is like, it's difficult to explain to people who don't gamble, but it's definitely like, I think, comparable to your decision making being impaired when you've had a few drinks. Like that's the thing I would equate it to. Or maybe like if you've, done illicit drugs or something like if, I mean, I think it just like completely screws or scrambles your brain. And then, and it's always the first bet that you can control as you learn in recovery, right? So I'm not going to do the first bet, but if I have the first bet, then my entire decision making ability is impaired from then on. And that's quite scary, really.
Yeah, yeah. No, I've never heard it compared that way before, using that metaphor of your decision making being impaired, like when you have alcohol. But it makes complete sense because yeah, that first bet, I go in there, I'm just intent on placing this one bet, and that's it. As soon as that bet goes in, win or lose, my mind is thinking completely different. Yeah, it's like I'm like a bloody chicken with no head, running around, placing on the bet and saying, I'm placing on the dogs, whatever I can get my money on. So yeah, it completely makes sense. The first time I've heard it, but I'm nodding along to you. Just let me take you back into your addiction. That £700 that you won, you started at 16. Was that still age 16? That £700, or was that a year or two
No, that was
into your addiction?
a few weeks in, and I just started a job, and my monthly wages was £650, which is decent money. I was 16 years old, right? And I remember winning that money, and I was thinking, I've just won more than all that effort I've spent like working. I just won all that, and it's like that was the worst thing that could have happened. Obviously, I had the job, I kept the job, kept getting decent money, and obviously it would all go. Um, and then it got really bad when I went to university. So it had a big impact on my kind of development and my studies and like all that sort of stuff. When I went to university, it got really bad because I had suddenly all of this time. I felt like I had more money that I felt like I had more money than I actually had. And obviously then I was in the bookies, um, and it was something that I probably did more than actual university. I was in there much more than I was at the university. Um, it really screwed that experience up for me. Not just because I lost money because I did, and I nearly had to leave, and it was quite bad. But also just because it just distracted me from a moment in my life where I wish I was more present. I wish I was more there mentally and enjoying it and comfortable in my skin and just like having a good time like I was supposed to when I was 18, 19. And instead I was just in this like anxious state of like perpetual kind of trauma, one trauma to the next. And I really regret that because just because you don't get the time back. That's your university experience. That was it, and it was one that I was um, kind of defined, I think, by my addiction and by wanting to kill myself, which is like terrible, right? It's the worst thing that can happen if you want to kill yourself. Like, so it couldn't have been worse. And then I was lucky enough to turn it around, get the degree, turn the negative into a positive. But it was really, really hard, really difficult. But and I know that I was lucky because it could have it could have impacted me for years, and it didn't. And I'm very grateful for that. And it happened when I was young, which is also a good thing. So in that context, I'm grateful. And I know on the journey in my recovery and meeting people like yourself, like I've learned about how much it's impacted other people and the extent to which it has. And I just really wanted to like channel all my energy into helping other people. And I know that sounds a little bit like trite, but it's true. And it's just something that I don't know. It's an energy that I didn't have before I was addicted to gambling. I didn't have that drive to want to do that. So that's a positive.
Yeah, no, I say that the one thing I was always so passionate about was my gambling. Now I'm in recovery. That's the thing that I'm so passionate about. And same as you, I want to now pass what I've learned on to others. I say I'm a grateful recovering compulsive gambler because I'm grateful for my addiction because it's now made me the best version of myself. I'm the best version of myself I've ever been right now in this very moment. And that's because of all the pain, all the chaos that I lived for 20 plus years in that addiction. I don't ever want to go back to that. And that made me realize I have to change the way I'm living. I've got to change so many things. And in changing those things, I've now become the person that I was always meant to be. And I now want to share that and want other people to be able to do that because I do Gamblers Anonymous meetings every week. I can see how many people are still out there struggling, how much worse it's getting week on week, month on month. And I want to try and now help people give them the freedom and the peace of mind that I've got in my recovery. Matt, not only thank you for your time here today with me, I want to say thank you for all the campaigning that you've done through the years. Thank you for all the selfless work that you've done. Just the betting terminals alone, getting them down from £100 a spin to £2 a spin is an amazing achievement.